Let's talk about red flags as you're negotiating a contract. And we see these all the time because we negotiate hundreds of contracts over the years. The first thing to look for is the vendor creating chaos in your organization? And the biggest red flag is if you have multiple points of contact that the vendor is reaching out to and giving same or different information at different times. Now, we've been through these situations before when the client doesn't know who's in charge. They know who the sales guy is or the gal is on the vendor side, but that salesperson is reaching out to multiple people within your organization and giving them the same information or more information in one case and not so much in the other. What that does is it creates chaos within your organization. You don't know who's in charge. You're having multiple streams of conversations with the same vendor, and now the vendor can play you off against each other. Well, so-and-so director said this. Are you okay with that? Take your information, go back to the other director and say the opposite thing. Creates chaos, you don't know who's in charge, and all the vendor is trying to do is create chaos within your organization. So that's a huge red flag. And what that leads to is delays in the contract negotiation process. And at worst, you might sign something out of frustration just to end the process, just to get out of the misery. So in those situations, the best thing to do is slow the process down. Slow it down, get everybody on your team in the same room and say, here's all the information I got from this vendor, what do you have? And then at the end of that meeting, you should have one clear leader on your end that does the negotiation. And we step in from our client's perspective on their side to do negotiations all the time. And we take over contract negotiations that are in shambles. And a very easy, quick thing to do is to have one designated point of contact that the vendor is supposed to respond to and reach out to and talk to about the contract. Let's talk about termination. Let's assume you never have to go through this, but software projects fail. You've seen the statistic, 80% of software projects fail. I don't know how much it's true, but it's a statistic that's used widely within the industry. Software projects fail for a variety of different reasons, and we've covered them in many different videos. All the way from lack of project management, bad vendors, bad software, you name it. Projects can fail despite your best efforts. So how do you get out of a bad contract with a software vendor that didn't deliver? We've done this for many clients, and we hope we never have to do it again, but it happens. Contract termination is a difficult process because you have clause built in there to protect both sides. The vendor is going to say, no, we delivered everything you asked us to. And the client, you, are going to say, no, your product doesn't work. So how do you get out of this contract? The vendor will say, of course you can get out of the contract, but you have to pay us everything you owe us for the next 10 years. Now, that's ridiculous, and you shouldn't be doing that. So where's the common ground? Contract terminations can happen for cause or for no cause. For cause means that you have specific reasons to say that the vendor violated the contract, didn't deliver on their promises, and therefore you deserve to get out of it. Now, the difficulty in that for-clause termination is that more often than not, you may not have documented everything that you claim to not have received. So terminations can be difficult. And when you don't have documentation to prove that the vendor is not delivering, you now have to pay SaaS fees that you owe or keep going with the contract, and those two situations are completely bad. So our recommendations always are make sure you have a full-time project management team, that they're documenting everything, that you're going back to the requirements definition that the vendor signed off on to make sure that they're delivering what they promised to you in the RFP response. That's what's in your contract. So you've tried everything, you're trying to get out of a bad contract, and now you have no other options but to go to litigation. Now, this is all defined in your contract. You have to define, there's arbitration clauses, you can have a third-party negotiator, third-party intermediary that will try and resolve this issue for you. And if you've done all of those things, there are remedies within the contract. Now it's time for litigation. And in my experience, that's not where you want to be. Contract negotiations are hard, but litigations are harder. Of course, they drag on for years, and there is no clear answer. there may be blame on both sides and the chances of success are very low. So in our experience and in our recommendation, don't let it go to litigation. And the best way to do it is to have defined requirements and definitions and a clear understanding of what you're buying from your vendor. If you have all of those things documented from the very beginning, if you have a great project management team that's keeping an eye on the most minute details so that the vendors are always held accountable for their actions, their product, and their services, this will never lead to termination or litigation. So the best way to do this, the best way to do contract negotiations, contract formulations, and increase your chance of success is to have everything defined up front. Make your own definitions for go live, for what success looks like, how are you going to pay the vendor, put all of that in the contract, and then life should be good. If you need help defining your requirements, redesigning business processes, or negotiating a contract, please give Avero a call. We're always in your corner and never aligned with the vendor.